Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. Justin Trudeau may no longer be the Prime Minister of Canada come October 28th. His own party members are extremely unhappy with him. They want him out. How did things reach this point? Why is Trudeau in such serious trouble? What does all of this tell us about his leadership? That's coming up as part of our top story tonight on Gravitas. And here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show. Will the UK and France join the war against Russia? We tell you why this big question is being asked. Bangladesh is witnessing turmoil all over again, with the situation now getting worse with each passing day. We tell you what's going on and get you the bigger picture. All this and more coming up. Our top story tonight is from Canada. The country's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau may be out of office as early as next Monday. Yes, you are hearing that right. Trudeau may no longer be the Prime Minister of Canada come 28th October. And why is Trudeau in trouble, you're wondering? Well, because his own party members want him out. Yes, his own party members, fearing that if he is not removed, the Liberal Party will be staring at a massive defeat in next year's federal election. Well, that surely says a lot about how unhappy they are with Trudeau. And in case you are wondering, how did things even reach this point? And just how unpopular is Trudeau really? And does the strained diplomatic relationship between India and Canada have anything to do with all of this? With Trudeau being the only leader in the West going out of his way to become hostile to India. Let's just break it all down for you. As per reports, in a closed-door meeting on Wednesday, at least 24 Liberal MPs signed a letter calling for Trudeau to step down as the leader of the Liberal Party. This is big, and it comes as a huge embarrassment for the Canadian leader. It gets worse. Reportedly, Trudeau was given an ultimatum to decide by October 28th, and what happens if he does not step down? The reports are yet to divulge the consequences if Trudeau decided against resigning. In fact, as per reports, during Wednesday's meeting, the Liberal MPs expressed concern over multiple issues, such as the rising discontent within the party regarding Trudeau's leadership, as well as the Liberal Party's preparations for next year's federal elections that need to be held before October 2025, by the way. But reportedly, the biggest issue was the declining trend in Justin Trudeau's popularity that has reportedly reached an all-time low, with rival Conservatives reportedly leading over Liberals by 19 points, leading to major panic within the Liberal Party. As per reports, many Liberal MPs have been holding secret meetings to plan Justin Trudeau's ouster and save the party from a quote-unquote massive defeat in next year's election. Canadian Immigration Minister Mark Miller, reportedly a close ally of Trudeau, summed up the general sentiment. As per reports, Miller told reporters that the entire issue between Trudeau and the Liberal MPs has been, quote-unquote, simmering for some time, and it was important for people to get it out. In fact, Miller said the entire incident was just MPs telling Trudeau the truth, whether Trudeau, quote-unquote, likes to hear it or not. So how exactly did Justin Trudeau, who led the Liberal Party to 3 consecutive election wins, become so unpopular? Not just within the Canadian public, but also within his own party. As per reports, the problems for Trudeau increased manifold June onwards when the Conservative Party won a by-election in Toronto. And the matter only worsened in September, when the Liberal Party also lost the by-election in Montreal. As per reports, the loss of these 2 parliamentary seats was a massive blow for the Liberal Party, as the 2 seats had traditionally been viewed as Liberal strongholds. Trudeau has become unpopular with the Canadian public. As per reports, Trudeau has failed to resolve key issues like high inflation, unaffordable housing and unemployment across Canada. Polls are also reflecting this growing public discontent among the Canadian people against Trudeau. And as we said last week, a poll by a Canadian not-for-profit organization, Angus Reid, showed Trudeau's disapproval rating to have risen from 39% in 2023 to 65%, a whopping difference. Meanwhile, his approval rating standing at just 30%. Compared to 51% last year. A lot has clearly changed. According to various reports, the strain in the diplomatic ties between Canada and India, stemming from the death of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, was an attempt by Trudeau to try and tackle his growing unpopularity levels and appeal to a key electoral demographic. How, you wonder? You see, Canada has a significant Sikh population, reportedly over 770,000, the 4th largest ethnic community in the country. And as per reports, some people in the Sikh community in Canada allegedly support the Khalistan movement. So by blaming India for the death of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, Trudeau is reportedly looking to appease and court some voters from this key electoral demographic. And it's important to note here that India has repeatedly denied having any role in the death of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, terming Canada's allegations as baseless. That's not all. Canada is yet to provide any evidence linking India to Nijjar's death. Meanwhile, Trudeau's rising unpopularity also reflecting in various polls, he is in serious trouble. Look at the numbers. As per a CBC News poll tracker, the Conservatives have a nearly 20-point lead over the Liberals, and according to a poll by Nanos, a Canadian public opinion and research company that was released last week, the Conservatives have 39% of the public support, with the Liberals on 23% and left-leaning New Democrats with 21%. And sensing opportunity, trying to make the most of the situation naturally, the leader of the Conservative Party and Trudeau's political rival has reportedly demanded fresh elections if Trudeau does not comply with the Liberal Party's decision to step down. And as it stands today, Trudeau's Liberal Party has 153 seats from the total 338 seats in the Canadian Parliament, while the Conservative Party has 119 seats. Why are we telling you that? Well, because there are 2 things to keep in mind to form a majority. A Canadian party has to win 170 seats. The Liberal Party did not do so in 2021. And the second thing to keep in mind here is that both the 2021 and 2019 elections, even though they won the elections, the Liberal Party lost the popular vote to the Conservatives. So with Trudeau's growing unpopularity and Liberal Party's recent election defeat in the stronghold seats, these margins become even more significant. Whether Trudeau resigns next week or not, we can't say. But it is absolutely clear that Trudeau has just a few days to make a decision either way. And unfortunately for Trudeau, there is no way to stop the clock. Our next story is about a war that, even after 2 years of intense fighting, is showing no signs of abating. Will it conflagrate into a World War III? As of now, it looks like things are heading in that direction. And why are we saying that today? Because after months of speculation, it has been confirmed that North Korea is indeed sending troops to Russia. Does this open a new front in the Ukraine war? Will the confirmation of this military partnership change the course of the conflict? Will it escalate tensions between Russia and Ukraine's Western allies? Remember, some European leaders in the past have suggested putting boots on the ground. So will NATO countries and other US allies like South Korea join the war is the question. Now, we will explore that in just a bit, but first, let's just get you up to speed with what we know as of now. Here's what's going on. South Korea, NATO, and the United States claim that thousands of North Korean troops are training in Russia. Listen to this.
We assess that between early to mid-October, North Korea moved at least 3,000 soldiers into eastern Russia. We assess that these soldiers traveled by ship from the Wonsan area in North Korea to Vladivostok, Russia. These soldiers then traveled onward to multiple Russian military training sites in eastern Russia, where they are currently undergoing training. We do not yet know whether these soldiers will enter into combat alongside the Russian military, but this is certainly a highly concerning probability.
Now, this is a claim that both Moscow and Pyongyang have denied, by the way. In fact, the Kremlin called reports on North Korean troop deployment to Russia contradictory information.
По-прежнему предпочитаем заявлять очень ответственную позицию в плане непридания публичности содержания разговоров, которые ведутся на высшем уровне. К нашему сожалению, целый ряд мировых лидеров такой позиции не придерживаются и такую информационную гигиену в данном случае не соблюдают. Но это на их совести. Сейчас звучит очень много.
But South Korea's spy agency has said that Russia is using North Korean troops as quote-unquote cannon fodder for its war in Ukraine. On Thursday, Seoul slammed the deployment and warned that it will not sit idle.
South Korea won't sit idle over this, and we will take necessary measures step by step with the international community, depending on the progress of Russia-North Korea military cooperation.
According to South Korea, the first batch of the elite forces left for the Russian city of Vladivostok early October. In fact, they say that 3,000 North Koreans are currently training at military bases across the Far East, using Russian paperwork and Russian uniforms. Seoul says that thousands more are to follow. Not just that, the South Korean spy agency claims that each North Korean soldier recruited by Russia will be paid $2,000 a month. That's more than the average North Korean makes in a year, by the way. They claim that Russia is hiring interpreters to train the new recruits on drone warfare and high-tech kits. The South Korean Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun described these soldiers as cannon fodder mercenaries for Russia. He said, and I'm quoting now, Kim Jong-un simply sold his soldiers. That's a big statement. What will the soldiers do is the immediate question. According to news agency AFP, North Korean special forces are trained to be deployed deep into enemy territory. Lim Eul-chul, a professor at Seoul's Institute for Far Eastern Studies, told AFP that their objective usually is to infiltrate the rare strike key facilities and carry out disruption operations. Ukrainian media reports saying that some troops will be dispatched to Kursk region. Remember, this is the Russian region which was hit by a surprise offensive by Ukraine this summer. And Seoul believes that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has sent his soldiers to act as a frontline cannon fodder. And it is legal because Kursk is Russian territory. So basically, Kim Jong-un can defend his move by saying that, well, his troops are assisting Russia in repelling Ukrainian quote-unquote aggression. And observers are not surprised. They say that this move follows what is called the letter of their treaty. It was signed by Kim Jong-un and the Russian President Vladimir Putin in June. And on Thursday, it was approved by Moscow's legislature. Which then brings us to the question of why does Russia want North Korean troops in the first place? According to South Korean experts, Russia suffers from personnel shortage on the front lines. The North Korean soldiers solve that issue. The question also is, will South Korea commit to Ukraine as a result of this? On Thursday, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol has said that Seoul will review its stance on providing weapons to Ukraine in its war with Russia. During a joint press conference with the Polish president in Seoul, Yoon said, and I'm quoting now, while we have maintained a principle of not directly supplying lethal weapons, we may review this more flexibly depending on the actions of North Korean forces, quote unquote. South Korea has hinted that it could consider providing weapons directly to Ukraine. That would basically mean reversing a long-standing domestic policy that bars arms transfers into active conflict zones. A former national security official, Choi Gil, told AFP that now with the latest development, it's highly likely that this will happen. As far as Ukraine is concerned, what will it do? Ukraine has already released a propaganda video targeting North Korean soldiers, claiming that if they surrender, they will receive food, comfortable accommodation, and health care. Ukraine, in a Korean language statement on YouTube, said, and I'm quoting here, surrender. Ukraine will protect you and provide food and warmth. You don't have to die meaninglessly on the soil of another country, quote unquote. Now, here's where things get worrisome. The reports that thousands of North Korean soldiers may soon join Russia to fight in Ukraine are reviving the talk of sending European troops to Ukraine and help Ukraine defend itself. The Lithuanian foreign minister told American news outlet Politico that it is time for European countries to revisit the French President Emmanuel Macron's idea of deploying troops to Ukraine. Earlier this year itself, the French president had floated the idea only to be quickly shot down by the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who vowed that no European or NATO troops would be sent to Ukraine. But things have clearly shifted as far as the Ukraine war is concerned. If what the US and allies are saying is true, and if North Korean soldiers are in fact fighting Russia's war, the Ukraine conflict will only get bigger. It would see the involvement of many other parties. And what happens when NATO members send their troops to defend Ukraine? It would bring the US-led military bloc in direct conflict with Russia for the first time since the Cold War. Last night, we told you how the faltering efforts of the US to stem the crisis in West Asia are leading some of its allies to pivot towards its arch-enemy, Iran. And tonight, we have more evidence of America's failed diplomacy in the region. Today, Russian state-owned media reported that Hamas plans to release 2 hostages who are Russian citizens as part of the first hostage deal. Now, remember, the US has pushed for a ceasefire and a hostage deal for months now, but has not succeeded in actually reaching an agreement. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in fact, has made several trips to West Asia this year without managing to stem the conflict. So the fact that Hamas is willing to release Russian hostages first raises a very big question. Does this mean that Russian diplomacy has achieved something that the Americans, despite their efforts and publicity, have not? Here's what we know. Reports say that the Hamas has said that 2 Israeli hostages, who are dual Russian citizens, will be among the first to be released during an eventual hostage deal. How do we know that? A Hamas Politburo member, Musa Abu Marzouk, told Russia's RIA state news agency after talks with Russian Deputy Foreign Minister in Moscow that the release of the 2 Russian hostages would be a priority. The Hamas member said that one of the hostages, Alexander Trufanov, is being held by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which has released 2 propaganda videos of him, by the way. He identified Trufanov as an Israeli officer and Herkin as a former soldier. Here's what else we know about the hostages in question. 30-year-old Trufanov is an engineer employed at Annapurna Labs, an Israeli microelectronics company purchased by Amazon. He was kidnapped on October 7, along with his mother, Yelena, grandmother, Irina Tati, and girlfriend, Sapir Cohen. All of them were released in a hostage deal in late November. In fact, his father, Vitaly Trufanov, was murdered on October 7 in the Hamas attack. And the other is Maxim Herkin. He is 35 years old. He was kidnapped from the Supernova Desert Rave on October 7. Hamas member Abu Marzouk claims that Herkin's family secured him a Russian passport after he was captured. And they did that in a bid to push for his release. And now their release would, of course, only be as part of a ceasefire deal and an exchange of hostages for Palestinian prisoners. Just to be clear here, no hostage deal has been struck yet. The Biden administration's year-long effort to mediate a ceasefire deal in Gaza and contain the violence in Lebanon has failed. The US has also struggled to convince the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to de-escalate the situation. Earlier this week itself, on Tuesday, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken landed in Israel for his 11th trip to the region in a year. He came to Israel to take advantage of the killing of Hamas leader and October 7 architect Yahya Sinwar and push a ceasefire in Gaza. The American officials, however, are only tempering expectations as Washington's calls for calm fall on deaf ears. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to push ahead with the wars in Gaza and Lebanon. In Gaza, Israel has intensified the military offensive in the northern part of the enclave in recent weeks. They are saying that there is a Hamas resurgence, but health officials warn that the area is already at a breaking point, with medicine, food, fuel, all in short supply. Residents, many of whom had been previously displaced, are now having to flee again after military evacuation orders. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, Israeli forces are continuing the ground raids on Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. And in the last 24 hours, the IDF said that it has struck more than 160 Hezbollah targets, including launchers and infrastructure, killing 20 Hezbollah members. And on Wednesday, Israel attacked Beirut's southern suburbs in one of the most violent attacks in the area since the war started. Israel launched 17 airstrikes over a span of few hours. Lebanese authorities said at least 1 person was killed, 5 injured in the strikes. But the Iran-backed militant group appears undeterred by weeks of heavy Israeli bombardment. On Wednesday, Hezbollah also fired about 135 projectiles into Israel from Lebanon. Speaking to his Israeli counterpart on Wednesday, the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin expressed concern about the reports of Israeli strikes against the Lebanese armed forces. He stressed on the importance of taking steps to ensure the safety of both the Lebanese army and the UN peacekeepers. But you see, that's just rhetoric. Until a ceasefire can actually be reached, death and destruction will only continue to haunt the region. On to the U.S. electoral battle now. Are the Democrats losing out on a key voter base? And the reason we are asking that is because some opinion polls are saying that more black men are choosing Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump. That's a key voter base for the Democrats, by the way. In the year 2020, 90% of black Americans voted for current U.S. President Joe Biden. Is the Democrat candidate Kamala Harris losing support among black male voters to her rival is the question. A new survey now shows that more than a quarter of black men prefer former President Donald Trump in this year's election. The latest Gen Forward poll released on Wednesday says that 26% of black men between the ages of 18 and 40 said that they prefer Donald Trump, in comparison to only 12% of black women who said the same. That's not all. According to Fox News, Trump's 2024 campaign has received a major boost from black male celebrities who have publicly announced their support for Donald Trump. We're talking about music artists, NFL players, professional boxers. In another poll by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, around 1/4 of all young black men support Donald Trump. Black men are increasingly warming up to Trump in this election. Meanwhile, these same polls have shown that Harris has significantly lost the support of black voters, particularly men, over the years. Let's just get you some more numbers at this point. According to a new poll from Harvard University, a private, historically black, federally chartered university, 82% of the black voters say they will prefer Harris and 12% say they will prefer Trump in the battleground states, while another 5% remain undecided. In fact, the survey found Trump's gains were most prominent among black men under 50. Not just that, more than 20% are planning to support Trump in these elections, which basically means that more and more black men are coming out in support of Donald Trump. Sure, Harris retains majority support from the black male voters, but it seems like Trump has been able to win some support from this demographic. And why is that? What are the trends suggesting? And why are so many black men pivoting towards Trump? Even if the opinion polls right now are vastly inflated, Trump seems likely to improve on his 2020 performance, in which he won 8% of the black voters. I'm talking about a demographic that has previously steered clear of Trump due to his association with white nationalists. So then how has Trump gained more acceptance among black male voters? What's going on? How has he been able to make inroads within the black community in such a way? According to the Times poll, much of the erosion of support for Harris among black Americans is driven by a growing belief that Democrats have failed to deliver on their promises. And if you ask the Republicans, they say that Trump's economic message has found a receptive audience among black and Latino men who are basically unhappy about the high cost of living. That could be a big factor. Many in America, in fact, complain about economic conditions. According to New York Times, just 20% of Hispanic voters, 26% of black voters say that the current economic conditions are good or excellent. More than half of both groups say they have often cut back on costs and daily expenses. Does this mean that the state of the economy is trumping racial issues for this community this election season? Does Trump's economic pitch appeal more and bring a sliver of hope for better jobs, better conditions, and overall a better life? Clearly, this will worry Harris's campaign advisors. No wonder then Harris has former President Barack Obama rallying the black male voters to support Trump. During a presidential rally held in Detroit, Obama gave a powerful speech trying to influence the Democratic voters to vote for Harris in numbers. Obama's call to voters as the former president of the United States, as a president of color, has a huge impact in order to impact or sway the voter sentiment. It seems that Democrats have taken out their big guns as a last-ditch effort to get the black male populace to support Harris. But is that enough? Is there a need for Harris to rethink her campaign strategy to win the confidence of the black male people, and that can secure her victory in this election? Remains to be seen. Following a deadly attack that took place near Turkey's capital, targeting a key defense firm, Turkey has launched a series of military strikes against Kurdish militants in both Iraq as well as Syria. Now, before we tell you more about these strikes, it's important to understand what happened on Wednesday. As per reports, at least 5 people were killed, 13 others were injured, when a powerful explosion occurred outside the headquarters of the Turkish aerospace industries, a major player in Turkey's defense industry. According to reports, the attackers arrived at the Turkish aerospace industries compound in a taxi. CCTV footage from the scene showed 2 men armed with guns entering the building, pointing their weapons at civilians. They targeted a state-owned aviation company. The Turkish security forces neutralized the attackers and secured the area. Emergency services were dispatched to the site and some of the employees of the company were taken to a safer place. Reports say the Turkish aerospace industries, the target of the attack, is a key player in Turkey's defense sector. With approximately 10,000 employees, the company is responsible for producing Turkey's first national combat aircraft and maintaining the country's fleet of F-16 fighter jets. And in the aftermath of the attack, Turkey quickly responded. As per reports, Turkey launched airstrikes on Kurdish positions in northern Iraq and Syria. According to Turkey's Ministry of Defense, more than 45 targets were destroyed in the retaliatory strikes. As per reports, pro-Ankara Syrian fighters also launched rockets towards areas in northeastern Syria controlled by the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces. The Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces reported that at least 12 civilians, including 2 children, were killed in the air raids, with another 25 people injured. As per reports, the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who was attending the BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia, called Wednesday's attack a heinous act of terrorism, quote-unquote. Listen in.
I especially thank you for your condolences. We have 4 martyrs and 14 injured. I condemn this heinous terrorist attack and wish God's mercy to our martyrs.
As per reports, the Turkish president cut short his summit trip and returned to Istanbul, underscoring the seriousness of the situation. Turkey's Western allies also quickly rallied behind Ankara. The NATO Secretary General condemned the attack, stating that NATO is standing by its ally and closely monitoring the situation. The White House also weighed in, with National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby denouncing the violence, even as questions about the attackers' exact motives remain a major concern. As per reports, no group has so far claimed responsibility for the attack, but Turkey's Interior Ministry has said that the Kurdish militant group, the PKK, or the Kurdistan Workers' Party, is behind this attack. This group has long been at odds with the Turkish state, and its activities are seen as a major security threat for Ankara. As per reports, the PKK has been involved in an armed insurgency against Turkey for over 4 decades, seeking greater autonomy for Kurds living in southeastern Turkey and neighboring countries. The conflict, which began in 1984, has claimed tens of thousands of lives, and the group is classified as a terrorist organization by Turkey, the US, the European Union, and the UK. As per reports, Turkey's strikes on Kurdish positions in Iraq and Syria are part of a broader effort to dismantle the PKK bases in these regions. Northern Iraq has reportedly long been a stronghold for the Kurdish militants. The YPG, an affiliate of the PKK, reportedly operates in northern Syria. Both groups, as per reports, seek to carve out autonomous regions for Kurds across borders, a move that Turkey fiercely opposes. In fact, reports say the PKK's history stretches back to the late 1970s, when the group first emerged, aiming to establish an independent Kurdish state that would span parts of southeastern Turkey, Iraq, Syria, Iran. The Kurds reportedly make up about 20% of Turkey's population. And as the tensions escalate, Turkey's military operations in Iraq and Syria, as per reports, are likely to continue. On to some news now from Indonesia. Indonesian patrol ships drove a Chinese Coast Guard vessel away from a survey vessel. The Indonesian authorities said on Thursday the vessel was in a disputed area of the South China Sea for the second time in 4 days. What really happened? Our next report getting you the complete story. Take a look.
On October 23, China once again provoked a country in South China Sea. For a second time in 4 days, Indonesian patrol ships had to drive away a Chinese Coast Guard ship from a research vessel doing its job in the region. Indonesia's Maritime Security Agency said the ship twice approached a research vessel called MV Geo Coral. They said that the Chinese ship was interrupting a seismic data survey being conducted by the state energy company called PT Pertamina. Chinese ships have regularly entered the area Indonesia calls the North Natuna Sea, fueling tensions between the two countries. The latest encounter took place in the disputed South China Sea, where China has unilaterally made sweeping claims. As a result, China has antagonized other countries in the region, such as Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Taiwan, and Vietnam. China's 9-dash line, which it uses to roughly demarcate its claim to most of the South China Sea, overlaps with a part of Indonesia's exclusive economic zone that extends from the Natuna Islands. A 2016 international arbitration ruling involving the Philippines invalidated most of China's sweeping claims. But China has completely ignored the ruling and called it a sham. The Chinese Coast Guard ship CCG 5402 was first detected near MV Coral on Monday. An Indonesian patrol ship contacted the Chinese ship, whose crew claimed that the area was under Chinese jurisdiction. 2 days later, on Thursday morning, the Chinese ship once again approached the site of the seismic survey and did not respond to calls from the Indonesian Coast Guard. The Indonesian Coast Guard again drove the vessel away. This just fits the pattern of behavior for Chinese ships operating in the South China Sea. Chinese ships also regularly patrol off the island of Borneo and near James Shoal east of the Natuna Islands, which is China's southernmost territorial claim, which Malaysia says belongs to it. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
On to Bangladesh now, where fresh political turmoil broke out once again amid rising tensions between the protesters and the interim government. The Muhammad Yunus-led interim government has banned Bangladesh Chhatra League, a student wing of the Sheikh Hasina-led Awami League Party. The interim government has banned it under an anti-terror law. Let's just get you the details here. The interim government banned the student wing under Section 18(1) of the Act, that too with immediate effect. And why is that? Well, the government cited the involvement of the student body in violent attacks on protesters that led to the ouster of the Hasina government back in August, after she faced violent protests against her government, leading to the deaths of hundreds of people since mid-July. According to a PTI report, a notification signed by the senior secretary under the Ministry of Home Affairs said that over the past 15 years, the student body under the Awami League government was involved in various activities, those that disrupted public safety, such as murder, rape, torture, harassment in student dormitories, and tender manipulation. Not just that, the notification also said that there was sufficient evidence that the student body was involved in conspirational, destructive and provocative activities against the state even after the Hasina government was removed from power. Meanwhile, this decision by the interim government came days after the anti-discrimination student movement demanded a ban on the student body, which it had issued to the interim government on the 22nd of October as part of its 5-point demand. The recent decision of the interim government is being seen as caving into a key demand made by the protesters. This is important as Bangladesh is on the boil now, with protesters wanting the immediate resignation of the president, Mohammad Shahabuddin, over his recent comment on Hasina's resignation, with one demand of the protesters now being met in a way What lies ahead for Bangladesh? Only time will tell. Shifting focus now to the US, where an E. coli outbreak linked to McDonald's Quarter Pounders has led to at least 49 illnesses across 10 states, including one death. And now the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, has issued a food safety alert. In fact, it has warned that dozens of people reported eating the Quarter Pounder sandwich at McDonald's before falling sick. No specific ingredient has been confirmed as the source of the outbreak, but the U.S. Food and Drug Administration says that slivered onions or beef patties on the Quarter Pounder sandwiches are the likely source of the contamination. And as a result, McDonald's has taken Quarter Pounders off its menu in about a fifth of its stores. The fast food giant has also stopped using the onions as well as Quarter Pound beef patties in several states like Colorado, Utah, while the investigation continues.
Quarter Pounder is like my go-to meal here, so my go-to burger. So the fact that I can't even really order it is really sucks. To say the least. Obviously, you could always just get a hot and spicy or just a cheeseburger or something, but I don't know. I'm a pretty big fan of the Quarter Pounder. I've been getting that since I was a toddler, so here we are.
What exactly is E. coli? Basically, bacteria found in many places like the intestines of people and animals. Most kinds of E. coli are harmless, but some can make you sick. The CDC, FDA, USDA, FSIS, and public health officials in multiple states are investigating an outbreak of E. coli infections. E. coli infections can be serious. Infections can occur after someone swallows the bacteria, often when consuming contaminated food or water. It can also spread from person to person through poor bathroom hygiene. In fact, people with E. coli infections may have symptoms including severe stomach cramps, diarrhea, fever, vomiting. Symptoms usually begin 3 to 4 days after swallowing the bacteria, although most people who become ill recover without treatment within a week. Others can develop serious kidney problems and require hospitalization. Senior citizens, children younger than 5, and people with weakened immune systems are most at risk of infection. And now the latest outbreak has led to at least 10 hospitalizations. This includes a child who had a syndrome, which is a serious complication that can basically develop from an E. coli infection. Meanwhile, one older person has died. Currently, according to the CDC, most of the illnesses related to the outbreak are in Colorado and Nebraska. Illnesses have also been reported in Iowa, Missouri, Montana, Oregon, Utah, Wisconsin. But the CDC says that the outbreak may go beyond these states. The CDC recommends that people call their doctor if they have recently eaten a McDonald's Quarter Pounder and are experiencing severe E. coli symptoms. And as far as the investigation goes, they say it is fast moving.
Foodborne illnesses, they're very, very rare, very uncommon, but they do happen, so we need to be vigilant. But I don't think that it communicates that things are unsafe at all. And I think when you look at the total numbers, it tells us how incredibly safe our food system really is.
Meanwhile, the president of McDonald's USA has said that it is safe to eat at McDonald's and that the affected ingredients are probably out of the supply chain at restaurants. Speaking to NBC, McDonald's USA President Joe Erlinger said, and I'm quoting, "We are very confident that you can go to McDonald's and enjoy our classics," quote unquote.
It is important to note that the onset dates for this disease are between, at this point, September 27th and October 11th. If there has been a contaminated product within our supply chain, it's very likely worked itself through that supply chain already. But certainly we'll be working with the CDC and cooperating with them on the investigation, and we'll take in more data and let the science continue to lead our action.
And according to the CDC, quarter pounder sandwiches will temporarily be removed from the menu in some states as the company makes supply changes. A fact sheet from the company highlights food safety protocols that it says are in place, including daily temperature checks and hourly hand washing for employees. On to China. Coastal cities like Panjin and Yingkou in Liaoning province and Tangshan in Hebei province were deluged as a result of high tides, flooding homes and vehicles in the area since the start of this week, and things kept getting worse. This unforeseen extreme weather event left much of the East Coast underwater as experts looked for answers. What experts say is that in the absence of obvious wind and waves, a sudden increase in water levels over such a large area has never been recorded either domestically or internationally. And what was different basically was that the event was strong and sustained, with water levels staying about 1 meter above normal for more than 20 hours, with several tide gauge stations in Liaoning reporting record-breaking levels. But the impact was also felt in many other parts of the country. Reverse flows of seawater surged down the coast of the Yellow Sea in Jiangsu province, as well as the East China Sea coast in southeastern Fujian province. According to an expert from the Ministry of Natural Resources, the unusual rise in water levels was due to mainly a combination of storm surge oscillations and astronomical tides that began a couple of days earlier. A warm, moist airflow had moved north along the Yellow River, colliding with the southward moving cold front in the Bohai region, forming a cyclone similar to a typhoon, which caused a storm surge in advance. The oscillation started in Bohai Bay on October 19, propagating southward to Shandong, and then rebounding back to Liaoning, where it met the high tide, leading to a seawater backflow phenomenon. And this serves as a reminder to us in the context of global climate anomalies. Extreme weather events may arrive quietly without any warning, and that we need more research on new kinds of natural disasters. Have you heard Elvis Presley's iconic song from 1956, Are You Lonesome Tonight? Or Akon's remixed version of Bobby Winton's iconic song, Lonely? If you listen to the lyrics closely, they talk about loneliness, the feeling of being unloved or uncared for. And that's exactly what's alarming authorities in South Korea, the number of people feeling that way. Let me tell you why. Touted as one of South Korea's biggest problems that is claiming thousands of lives each year, lonely deaths, known as godoksa in Korean, is becoming a growing concern for the authorities, and they have pledged to pull out all stops to fight this. According to reports, mostly middle-aged men die quietly and alone, cut off from their family and friends. Sometimes it takes days or even weeks before their bodies are found. Now, in a bid to tackle this problem of loneliness or isolation in the bustling capital of Seoul, authorities have announced that they would spend nearly $327 million over the next 5 years to create a city where no one is lonely. You heard that right. So how exactly do they plan to tackle this? According to the metropolitan government, they have planned loneliness counselors, which will be available on a 24/7 hotline, an online platform for loneliness counseling, as well as follow-up measures, including in-person visits and consultations. In fact, the city also plans to introduce expanded psychological services and green spaces, nutritional meal plans for middle-aged and elderly residents, a dedicated search system to identify isolated residents who need help, and activities to encourage people to venture outside and connect with others, like gardening, sports, book clubs, and more. According to South Korea's Ministry of Health and Welfare, the number of lonely deaths has been rising, reaching 3,661 last year, up from 3,559 in 2022 and 3,378 in 2021. According to a report, while in some cultures, loneliness is seen as a feeling that happens when relationships are not fulfilling, in Korea, people say they feel very lonely when they feel they are not worthy enough or lack purpose. Experts claim that this is a common sentiment echoed by many millennials and Gen Z Koreans who are basically sensitive to criticism while being overly self-critical and afraid of failure. As South Korea's capital pulls out all stops to tackle this issue, have you found yourself feeling this way? Have you felt the need to address this issue? For those of you planning your dream wedding, forget the usual venues. What if I told you that Balmoral Castle, yes, the British royal family's estate itself, might be an option? You heard that right. As per reports, King Charles has put forward a plan to turn part of the historic Balmoral estate into a wedding venue. Now let's just pause here for a moment and imagine exchanging vows with the stunning Scottish landscape and Balmoral Castle as your backdrop. As per reports, King Charles is hoping to convert the Queen's building just steps away from the castle into a space for weddings, dinners, meetings, events. Reports say the castle has been the private Scottish retreat of the royal family for over 170 years. It was also reported to be a favourite of Queen Elizabeth II. Remember, she spent the last moments of her life in this castle in September 2022. So why is the British royal family considering holding events like weddings in the Balmoral Castle? Well, as it turns out, Balmoral is not cheap to maintain. As per reports, running the estate costs around £3 million a year. That's $3.90 million, with over £1 million or $1.3 million US going to wages. But with around 75,000 visitors a year, the estate has been finding creative ways to cover costs, like £100 or $130 ticket tours with an extra £50 or $65 for afternoon tea, or a 7-course dinner with wine pairing for £250. That's $325 per person. As per reports, the new plans for the castle involve expanding the Queen's building in order to hold more guests, up to 277 inside and up to 144 outdoors. The plan, as per reports, also suggests making the outdoor area wedding ready with the potential for live performances, dancing, alcohol sale until midnight. Just picture this for yourself, a royal worthy wedding or event under the stars. So if you are dreaming of a wedding fit for royalty, this might just be the perfect venue for you. And on that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off. Thanks for watching.